Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Grind Lifestyle. I am Jesse Dugas. That is JP Pierce. That is Nick Martin. And that is Jim Gray. How we doing, gentlemen?
Great.
Good. Jim, how are you today?
I've never seen you do that before, Jesse. Holy shit.
You like that one?
That was good.
Jim, how are you today, sir? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, I'm great, guys. Hailing out here from Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, man. Is it humid here today?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much from here on out. It's humid most of the summer, but
it's the South,
it's
man.
okay.
Yeah,
It's the South.
I've been in Nashville in July a couple of years ago. Woof. I had never experienced one of our former guests, Barry Corbin, compared it to like sitting in a sponge living in Nashville that time of year.
That's right. And I'm a
Western.
I'm a West Coast boy, so it's like, I like them dry summers. I like it hot and dry, But yeah, thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure. Heard a lot about the show and looking forward to having a good conversation today.
Very nice. Why don't you tell us and our listeners a little bit more about you?
Yeah, so my name is Jim Gray, otherwise known as @JimGray online. That's Gray with an A on Instagram and all the places. And I am a music industry entrepreneur based in Nashville, Tennessee. And I own a company called Gray Artist Services, and we specialize in 4 things. We do artist development, artist management, a full creative agency, and a record label. And most of my time these days is spent either managing my team of coaches or people that are working on my team, as well as, my client load and relationships and things like that. And I was very fortunate to get my start working in the music business, working for a record label in Colorado, where I was for 8 years before Nashville. And before that, I was, I've had roles at organizations where I was senior digital marketing strategist and things like that. And so I have like this baseline of a foundation, if you will, of digital strategy, relationship development from companies, as being a manager for companies like Enterprise Rent-A-Car. So it's almost like Fortune 500 digital strategy and a lot of other sort of like kinetic energy from a lot of business experience, and bring that into the music business. And so yeah, it's that's what I've had the blessing of doing that. And I've got 3 adult kids. One who's 30, a son who's 30, a daughter who's 28, another son who's 25. 2 sons on either side of the poor daughter in the middle. They're both musicians, so both sons are songwriters and artists and things like that. And but yeah, just out here helping people navigate, the music industry and things like that. And yeah, having a lot of fun doing it too.
Do you get any sleep?
Oh yeah. Mainly on the weekends.
All right.
But I'm a rhythms guy. So I was raised I'm a 5th generation far northern Californian. My great grandfather Gray came from New Brunswick, Canada, to Eureka, California during the gold rush. So, and my great grandfather, my grandfather, my dad, my uncle, and my brother were all in the logging industry in far northern California. And so, I come from that work ethic that, you work hard, play hard. And these days, what's most important to me is not what I know about the music industry or not all the things that I've done or whatever. It's actually about what I do every day. It's about the daily rhythms. It's really difficult to grind, if you will, without knowing who you are. Right. So I'm big on being, what does it take for Jim Gray to be centered every day? So I start every day with basically the 4 W's. It's I write, I journal, right? So I write, I walk, I lift weights, and I work. I do those 4 basic things every day. Those are the most important things I do every day that set me at my core, rather than just all the music business stuff. Like that'll happen for sure. But the work ethic helps, and so does the daily rhythms.
That's amazing, man. Fun fact, I spent a year of my life in McKinleyville, and I worked in Eureka. And I also had my 1992 Mustang convertible GT stolen out of Eureka. And Never seen again.
Yeah.
But that was a few years back. But I love that area of the world. It's just, I mean, Humboldt, man, good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's say
we got to meet you, Jim. Like it's crazy how our worlds cross paths through Trevor Hanks out of here, and
That's right.
all the cool stuff you're doing of like getting everybody going. And you saved one of our clients' butts on when he lost his streaming platform thing going. So
That's right. That's right.
you definitely are a guru when it comes to what you do, which is awesome.
Actually, the truth is that, and I appreciate that. Thank you for that. The truth is what I'm actually really good at is I know a lot of the right people, and I've got those relationships, and I actually rely more on those people to make me informed decisions, because my job is really functioning as the CEO and founder of my company, and then making sure that I don't get too far in the weeds, and then knowing where my boundaries are, right? And that I'm not undermining somebody else. I mean, Nick, you and I have tons of conversations about, hey, you guys are developing somebody, right? And your artist management flow. And then I'm coming in as like, hey, I'm Jim. I'm sort of like, I'm like Gandalf-ish with the white beard and everything and the trucker cap. And we're coming alongside and we're having these, conversations almost every week about, okay, this one, we're going to have to do this. And these guys don't know anything about this, so we're going to have to go this way. And so it's been fun. We had a conversation back in November, and was introduced, like you said, through Trevor Hanks out of Medford, and who are now, he and his wife Christina are now signed to my label. Their new act, the Paper Flares, they drop a song here in a couple weeks. And the Oregon thing is very intriguing.
They're debuting that new act on July 4th in Grants Pass. So that's going to be like the first time we'll get to see that live, which is really cool.
That is amazing. So what happened was I ended up back, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. I had a music producer that started referring clients to me, and I said, hey man, thanks for, kind of hit him up and called him. I said, thank you for referring your clients to me. But why are you referring them to me? Like, don't you do that for your clients? And he goes, no, man, I'm just the music producer. And I was like, wait, you don't have somebody that offers like marketing and advertising support for your music clients? And he's like, no, because if they're not managed and they're independent, none of us know somebody who does what you do. So I started like, developing all these relationships, and I knew how to do that from Fortune 500 and other industries, how to build affiliate partnerships. And so I just went to music producers and said, hey, if you need something, it'll help you guys, make you look better, and help your story and help your clients and help all these songs. Cause I said, really, if you're just, people are paying you to produce music, but those songs aren't going anywhere. Like that's not good for your brand. And they're like, whoa, you're right. And so I ended up, working with some folks from Southern Oregon because of a relationship I had with a producer there. And, it's been pretty cool to see how it all work out. And, I think by this point we've marketed around like 500 songs since the pandemic, which is a crazy number. That's like up there with like, some major labels. So.
Can I ask you what your relationship is with the radio industry, with what you do?
I mean, we hire radio promoters, but I've never really been involved with the radio side. We've definitely hired promoters. Depends on what the genre is for the client and the project. But yeah, I don't really do anything with radio. I kind of almost came in too late for some of that.
Right.
And then I was involved with behind the scenes at the marketing at the label level, and they had a radio person that handled all that. These days,
as far as like a client or an artist that you've brought along.
Yeah.
And you want them to get played.
Yeah.
How do you traverse that?
We have to hire a promoter. We have to pitch a promoter. We've got to have the budget.
Literally, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not cheap. It's
on the Christian side, there's like there's like 1 or 2 guys that do that we would go to on the CCM side. On the jazz side, there's a number of those outlets. We did a radio promotion for a jazz single. I think it was the summer before last or last summer. And then right now, actually, we're looking at we were going to look at a country promoter for a country artist, but we're doing that through some other avenues as well. The problem is you're pitching those people and they might be really interested in the song, but there's like no guarantee that your song's going to get picked up. And so we've kind of like, I built some strategy around to kind of like help push some other numbers, because, you know, you need to have good Spotify numbers and other things to really get gigs these days.
Right.
And so it's like looking at the whole formula and looking at the whole thing and saying, you know, what are the best practices in every area? And then what do we actually have the money or the time to do that would help, like, you know, make something, do something. And the biggest trick, I was told by a songwriter a couple of years ago, who's written a lot of songs here in Nashville. His biggest success is that he didn't quit. You'd be surprised how many songwriters and how many artists, even that had good songs, like they quit. And they were, you know, some of them have gone on to be realtors and things like that. And so just staying in the business sometimes is the real secret.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well,
the big thing I learned about radio is you actually your artist has to break on TikTok or Instagram. And if they break on TikTok, they get a viral video, they can have anything they want. They're going to get picked up by pretty much iHeartRadio, Sirius XM. Those guys will pick them up. You also find numbers to back up the break on TikTok and Instagram. If you accidentally break too fast on TikTok without the Spotify numbers, something looks fake, and then you're like, oh crap. So there's a whole formula of what you're doing, and then, like, for example, we called a radio promotion company for Brandon Jordan, and it was literally close to $100,000 to pitch one song to nationwide terrestrial radio, with no guarantees that one song would even get picked up by one station.
And you know
so
what is like absolutely crazy about what you just said there, Nick, and that terrestrial radio is not the way to go anymore. Unfortunately, you know what I mean? It's that old saying, it's radio will never die, but terrestrial, it's definitely on life support. And it blows my mind that there's so much emphasis still put on that versus the Spotify, the TikToks, the streaming platforms, whatever you name it.
Well, it's frustrating too, for like from the artist standpoint, and like I didn't get it until you actually start talking to actual real musicians, like that play their instruments, that write their songs, to be forced to have to break on a social media platform where you've got kids messing around with a computer program, not singing, not doing anything, and they're getting paid close to millions of dollars to do what they do. And then you've got guys that are just working so hard and passionate about what they do, not making enough money to pay their rent.
Yeah.
Like that's the huge frustrating point of the industry. So getting people to understand, like, you got to find a fine balance between both. It's great if you're talented and you love this, but you also have to be social media savvy and be willing to do the stupid TikTok dances and whatever else comes along with it. I mean, there's a reason why MTV's Cliche is the biggest song in the world right now.
Yeah.
Not that the song's good, it's that he's got a fun dance. Like that's
the one thing is that you could find somebody on TikTok and they could have really good numbers, but they could still be a crappy songwriter. They could have crappy work ethic. They could have a whole bunch of things. And I don't give a rat's ass what you have on TikTok. If you're entitled, you don't have work ethic, and you're not a good songwriter willing to learn, I don't want to work with you.
So the entire young generation right now is what you're saying.
I mean, some of them, though, I'm finding people, though, that are so, I mean, sometimes I'll go to like but I totally get what you're saying, man. It's, and there's different parts of the generation. Really depends on who they're raised by. As being a parent of 20 somethings, you know, I'm careful too, not to put all of Generation Z in one basket. I mean, Generation X was like really complicated because we have all this new wave stuff and all this new immersion of like a new type of rock and genres and all this stuff. And, but one thing I am seeing is that, like, I was on an artist pitch panel a couple of months ago at a local recording institute here. And what I look for is, having been at times, you know, raised lower middle class or just lower class sometimes, hunger recognizes hunger because you never lose the hunger. And when I see somebody who is like, they're not only are they singing and they brought their own keyboard player and all that, but they're after that session is done for their song and there's a break, that person is over there talking to me and other people on that panel and asking if they can get meetings. That impresses me when somebody's using business tactics that I would have to teach somebody else. Because a lot of artists, they're just like, well, I just want to be an artist.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, well, that's cool, but what we try to practice is that we try to practice that, hey, you should manage yourself first, which is kind of what artist development is. You should learn to manage yourself so that if you ever do become managed, you need to know like what you need to know what all the best practices look like and what are the best things. Ideally, if someone's in my artist development program long-term, I'd want them to be in my artist management program. Right. But, and I think there's a lot of like anxiety in the music industry, just like what we're talking about with, you've got all these platforms that we're building on, or we're supposed to build content on, and we still got the pressure of content, writing songs, you know, working at a restaurant to pay the bills, you know, living with roommates, whatever it is. These days, I'm actually developing a mental health program. I had like an hour-long conversation yesterday with a guy who's a doctorate. You know, he's got a doctorate or a PhD in psychology, who's a good friend of mine, about partnering together to help artists with just being centered with self-awareness and emotional intelligence. Because the stress levels of all the stuff that Nick's talking about, even about TikTok, and all this making the content and the balancing of life, you know, so we're really kind of sometimes concerned about, you know, that people are, there's a lot of pressure, you know, and in order to go viral, it's one thing to go viral, but like if you don't have a team behind you or you don't really know what to do, there's really no magic formula, in my opinion, at least. But
So it looks like you've done some promotion overseas. How do you find the market different there than here?
Yeah, I've done a little bit of promotion overseas, like in England, but most of what I do is I started off doing Spotify and YouTube promotions during the pandemic, and I started offering that to artists. And so I did some of that with England, some folks in England, some folks in Canada, and then mostly in the U.S. And built my relationships that way. But really, just I was pitching, you know, offering people Spotify playlist pitching, where we were pitching them to playlist curators that we had relationships with, and then also YouTube advertising. And those are the first things I started off with. I actually didn't start with management or anything else because I had to have some kind of offer, some value to offer them, right? That was going to help them with their own branding and everything. And thank God I had a lot of sales training, right? On how to take a lead, how do you develop a relationship, how do you nurture that, how do you develop a lead, how do you like provide value and all those things. I had to know a lot about just sales and business in general. But most of my work, I haven't really been in the music business that long. I've only really officially been in the music business since I got hired by a label in 2011. And so there's a lot that I don't know. And I have a whole group of friends and advisors I can go to and say, I'm working with somebody and they're here. Like, I don't know what I can do with them after this point, you know? And so they'll be like, oh, well, you just need to go talk to this person. And this is everybody. When anybody's at that point, you just have to go continue to have conversations with different people and people will share information. I was like, oh, so nobody knows what they're doing.
It's not, honestly, it's been like the best thing for me too, is surrounding myself with people that know more than I do. So like if I have a management question, I can call any list of managers now that manage bigger bands than we have. How did you get, you know, let's say POD, for example, how did you get Sonny from the level he's at, where my guys are at, to where they're at now? And Zach will walk you through that. So that's been really helpful. I can call you and ask you, okay, what do I do when my artist loses his Spotify playlist? And you have an answer for me. We had no idea.
Or at least I know I can go talk to, my promotions manager about what to do through that. There's a lot of things I don't know. And I'm really careful to say, like, hey guys, I actually don't know everything to do here, but I know who to ask.
Yeah.
Having partners or associates that will give you information. And then, being really shrewd with my time, really shrewd with relationships. And I'm also, the other part is that I'm not naturally extroverted. Right. So that's the music industry. There's a lot of people in the music industry that are like super extroverts.
They did.
Whereas where I'm more like calculated and calibrating. That's why I had to build a team. Like everybody on my team is extroverted.
Okay.
I had to be smarter. I had to be smarter than your average bear in some respects.
You mentioned the 4 W's earlier.
Yes.
What would you think is the most difficult part of your day-to-day?
I think lately it's been more of, I'm more obsessed with building more process to help the team that I built and the relationships. And then I'm also constantly assessing and listening to things so anytime I get stressed about something these days, I sort of like make a note of that and say, why is that causing me to be stressed? And then what are some things that I could do? What are those things? What do they look like? It could be like new client calls, or it could be, and so the other day I was like, well, I've been the face of the company and the account executive and chief salesperson of my own company for 5 years. It's probably time that I have somebody else do that, because what I'm really good at is I'm good at the relational development and going out and making partnerships and things like that.
Right.
And, but yeah, I think too, just like, by the time Friday rolls around, I'm done. But the hardest part is keeping up with like the influx of communication. We have there's much more access to each other now. Like we've got Zoom, messaging, we've got all sorts of text messaging, email, phone calls.
Pigeon. I know. Yeah.
Carrier pigeon, Pony Express, like, we're probably from the same era, right? And hell, man, I remember I worked on a movie lot right after I was done with college in Los Angeles on the Universal movie lot. And we had union couriers that would pick up a package, right? They'd pick up a package. They could be like, as small as this, and their job was like to go and take that to another building, usually in an envelope. And these days, people have a lot more access. So a lot of times, the biggest gift that I ever got from Apple was do not disturb mode. Seriously, like,
speaking of which, I got to turn that on real quick,
right? But most of the time I'm pretty chill, and I kind of like it though. There's days where I've got my regular work. I've got things built. My days built in like pieces, like different cycles of doing things, and I try to do the same thing every day. And then, somewhere in the middle of that, I'll get a text from Nick. For example, I get a text from Nick, and he's like, hey, I got a new client that we're onboarding, and they're going to need this from you. So can you get a Zoom call set up, and I'll, work into that. And then sometimes, you're reaping the benefits of the relational equity that you've sown, you've thrown the seeds out, and you've got now producers that are referring their clients that are getting their masters back. They're coming to me and my team, and they're like, hey, we want to get our records marketed. And so there are times where I'm just like, I don't want any more. I mean, I want it and I love it. No, I love everything I do, but there are some days where I'm like, let me shut this lamp off. I want to shut the lights off and go home.
What is your process? The crazy thing about this too, like when we got started to work with you, like we had worked with 2 other labels that do distribution and stuff, promise the world. And you are so far the only one that has done everything they said they were going to do. and then some. Like, you were able to get one of our clients on an editorial playlist on Apple. That is absolutely amazing, especially for the style of music and
well, especially for that song. It was, I think even it was a cover.
Sure. That song,
it was an acoustic cover, right? And
yeah, no, it's not a cover song. It's original, but it's
oh, it's his original. Okay.
It still was. It was. Yeah, that's one of his originals. It was just
yeah.
I think it was recorded like in his living room though.
Well, it bothers
nothing
me.
Fancy, nothing crazy, but
yeah, bro, it bothers me, Nick, if I tell somebody I'm going to do it, and if I can't do that, that really the integrity of that really bothers me. And I had a client say to me recently, he was kind of making a joke. He's like, I like the fact that you mean what you say and you say what you mean. And I was like, is that rare? And he goes, yeah. Sometimes,
it's
and because
facets to life I find these days.
There's so much over promising and under delivering in just this industry. It's like, it's just, and one of the labels we worked with is fairly big, and one of the producers for that label worked with one of the biggest rock stars on the planet. So we thought, cool, this is going to be a great thing for us. And it was the worst thing the guys ever did. And then that's why we're releasing stuff through you.
Yeah. And that's been a real, a real eye-opening thing. Cause when I first went out, so what I did was I was thinking about, all right, and I asked a lot of questions, 5 or 6 years ago when I first moved to Nashville. What are the things that you're missing in your, where the people are like, well, I want to figure out how to get on Spotify playlists. I want to get my music distributed, and I just need somebody to talk to other than myself or my spouse or, whoever, or my bandmates, about how to navigate all this. And so I was like, well, okay, so I could develop coaching. I did that. And then I built the Spotify and YouTube promotions partnership. And I was like, all right, I've got coaching, I've got partnerships, or I've got coaching and I've got promotional partnerships. Okay, cool. And then I started managing somebody. And then I was like, well, the missing piece is the continuity thread is that I need distribution, because that's going to help like get everything out there. So I started kind of shopping around for basically a distribution deal, and had a couple of, thoughts about that. And then I got ended up having a conversation with a guy that I knew that I'd gotten introduced by another producer. And we were actually just having coffee talking about podcasting at that point. And he's like, well, you should be partnered with us. And I was like, what do you guys do exactly? Or how does that work? And so I ended up getting an offer. So my clients now are all distributed through that offer. I think in the past year, we've dropped like almost 55 songs in the past year, and growing all the time. And that's been a real eye-opening experience. Also is that like you're functioning as like an investor, because sometimes we're not asking for any money on the front end from some people. They just don't have the budget, but we know we're going to make money on the back end. Right. But, give me a second. I've got to switch my ears off because they're dying apparently. So I got to go MacBook Air speakers. There we go. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, I hope I answered your question, but
cool. Are you still there? Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, I still hear you. Blacked out for a second.
My ears died mid drift, so.
Tell me about your Redwood Highway Records label.
So Redwood Highway. So I was, born in my younger life as a kid. Lived on the Highway 101 in a certain area that they call the Redwood Highway. And so as I was looking to, get the distribution set up, they told me, they're like, well, we support independent artists or independent labels, record labels and management teams. And so they're like, and I didn't want my artist services company to be a record label, even though we have record label distribution services. So I built Redwood Highway Records as a brand to kind of like tell that story. And it's really cool because it's connecting kind of like my core story or my origin story where I grew up, working, my dad and family working in the logging industry and timber industry, and then connecting that with where I am now. And it's been beautiful, honestly. It's to do that. And in fact, I just had trucker caps made a couple of months ago, and I sent my dad a Gray Order Services trucker cap for Father's Day, and he sent me a picture of it. So that was pretty cool. But to have that sort of family, line, and then one of my sons is distributed through the label and things like that. But yeah, Redwood Highway is basically a brand I built. It's honestly, it's really just built for kind of having like some sort of positioning. So when I go out, I'm meeting with people and they're like, "Hey, I heard about Redwood Highway. What is that?" I kind of have a story behind that, but I knew I had to build a brand, to make more effective storytelling. But
you want to hear my Redwood Highway story?
What's that?
So I am the mayor of the small town that I live in. It's got about 2,500 people.
Yeah.
The one road is 199 Redwood Highway.
That's hilarious. I love that.
So, yes.
And I was looking for a name that was out of the area where my family was from. And I was looking at like I really didn't want Mendocino Records because I thought that would be like too specific. I wanted something was more like, had a really strong positioning kind of brand statement for it. And then I started playing around with the trees and what would that look like. And
I think Redwood Highway works way better than Ferndale.
Yeah, that's right. Or the Emerald Triangle, right? Emerald Triangle Records.
Arcata Records. No, that's just not.
Yeah. And it was really finding something that was like, well, it made sense that highway, because a lot of my thinking is a lot of my creative, as a natural creative who happens to be really, and I realize it's kind of at times it's unique that you'd be a creative, plus you'd be a business development person. Not everybody's wired that way. And, the fact that I'm doing what I'm doing and where I came from is really wild to me some days. I don't take it for granted. I express gratitude for that every day. Cause it came from some, the actual, family story we can talk about offline sometime at times wasn't easy, but, I think again, what made me different than a lot of other people was that I just kept like working on the next thing, working on the next thing and working on the next thing. And I also think that in a lot of ways, being a parent was some of the best training I've ever had. Learning to manage, learning to help develop somebody from a baby to a child, to a toddler, to a preteen, to a teen, to a young adult,
We're all right there with you, brother.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that one big phrase that I'm really passionate about is the idea of kinetic knowledge or kinetic energy, because there's certain people that you meet in life, you become friends with them or you get connected to them. Like me working with Nick, it's like there's a whole lot of things I don't have to explain to him, and there's a whole lot of things I don't have to explain to people that have that same like-mindedness or the same type of work ethic or whatnot. And so I look for that. That's a really important part. And I would say these days with the business that I'm running is that as much as I want to work with good people, I want to work with good artists, we're also on our side now kind of not now having to go like, well, we can't actually scale this business and work with everybody. We've got to have some sort of like qualifying, and if we do, accept somebody in one of our programs, where are they with their songwriting? So now we have 3 different coaches. 2 of them are focused on songwriting. One is like, where's your song? One is more like, hey, where's your songwriting at? What level is it at? Almost like an evaluation. Like, let's have you work with this coach for a while who happens to be a folk famous songwriter. And then another coach who is a full-time songwriter with a publishing deal and works with us part-time as a coach. And so, because we're going to be getting you into writing rooms for co-writes to write a new record or write with other people, then that has to you have to be good at that point. you've got to be qualified. You have to be affirmed. We can't just throw you into the room because you've got the budget to do it. So now it's like, now we have like level of not only like a business, but now we've had to go down a level and then forward, right? And make sure that things are thought through. So part of my new role as CEO is I have to be thinking about how is all that going to work? Like, great, we've got all these things going on. What directions are we going in? And how do we figure that out? And even things like I'm taking an executive leadership assessment pretty soon to figure out, like, you know, 'cause I'm constantly going. The best thing that I ever did in past 2 years was like focus more on decision making and how much faster can I make decisions.
Now, is that necessarily a good thing? Making the decision faster versus taking a little more time?
Well, you don't always have the time. It depends on the circumstance, right?
Yeah, and
yeah,
so many variables when it comes to that, you know?
But it's like, end of the day, it's like, okay, I can't, is this one, where's this one at? Where's this one at? Where's this one at? And then looking at all 4 things that we do and how are we doing that? So a lot of times on a Saturday morning, wake up early, have a cup of coffee, and I'm just sort of like reviewing in my brain and sometimes on paper, you know, I ask 5 questions to sort of give a diagnostic about where we are. And it's like, where are we thriving? Let's say it's like with artist development, where are we thriving? Where are we struggling? What's confusing? What's missing? And what's next? Right? We're trying to figure out, like, where are we at? Like, because you can go through the motions every day, but I have to be the one that's paying attention and sort of like listening and almost like auditing and saying, well, how are we going to grow? And if we do grow, and then how do we scale? Because after a while, you could grow your business to the point where, you know, you get so busy, you might be making money, but you might get the point where, you know, you got too much work going on. You're not actually able to. And for us, it's huge. Like what Nick was just talking about a little bit ago about under promising, over deliver is our motto. So we have to if we're going to be true to our word and do what we want, do what we guarantee, then we have to, we got to really work at it. And in order to do that, we have to have a lot of people that are speaking into my life. And then what does rest look like? You know, what is rest is really important. So the term, you know, whether you're spiritual or not, like the term Sabbath rest or some sort of rest, like what do your rest hours look like? Like, hey, I tell people now, it's like, hey, I don't work the weekends anymore. I did a lot of weekends for years, and I'll work weekends if it's a special event or something like that, or if it's necessary. And then what are, you know, now that everybody's, you know, we all have access to each other via text message, how are we managing that? Because now somebody can text me any day, even Sunday. There's no day that's like people won't text you, because a lot of these people, they're working full-time jobs. A lot of them, they're working a full-time job, and then the music thing I'm doing with them is their side thing. But yeah, as you guys can tell, I've spent a lot of time thinking about all this.
Yeah. Did you say earlier you had to get out of here in 30 minutes? Are we getting close to that time?
I'm getting close to that now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I have one question, and you two are going to appreciate this down there. At least, according to me, my guys are down there. There, Mr. Gray.
Yeah.
All right. If you could give one piece of advice to any up-and-coming artist you've just met, what's that advice going to be?
I would say write as many songs as you can. I would go all in. I'd be like, write as much as you can, connect as much as you can, be hungry, be open-minded. Don't let social media determine everything that you do. Stay true to your art. Some of the biggest breakthroughs I'm seeing is that, because sometimes you're not going to have the money, but if you have the idea, if you have the right song with the right idea, there's going to be people that are going to want to invest in that. A great song will take you a long ways. And even though with AI and all this stuff that people are doing, that's great. But like, I would say, in addition to that, know yourself and who you are and how to manage that. And that'll help your relationships with others. Because what it does is, and with emotional intelligence, the more you know yourself, the more it gives you awareness, and it gives awareness of others, and it gives you empathy and compassion for others, right? And when you're working with people, then you also should know how your artistry, what's that identity, and then how does that relate to others? So it's like personal and professional. It's me as a person, me as an artist, and how do those two things correlate and go back and forth with others that I relate to? And the other thing is, like, you don't need to hire anybody to do anything until you absolutely know that you can't do any more with everything that you've got. So learn as much as you can. There's podcasts, videos, coaches, all kinds of stuff. Learn and do it. Everybody says, "Oh, I need to make a team," and that's great. But you shouldn't, in my opinion, you shouldn't be having somebody else work for you until you can hold them accountable because you've done it. I've done everything in my company now. I can actually say, I don't think that's going to work. I'm not sure that would work because of this. I could be wrong though. So it's like be self-managed so that you could actually, so it's like know how to do design and know how to maybe you don't do Facebook ads, but you study it so you could ask questions.
Right.
Because if you're paying somebody else and they're not doing, how would you know if they're doing what they're supposed to do? And have somebody to hold you accountable. Don't be a lone ranger. I would say to people that are outside of Nashville, on the West Coast and other places, there are a lot of us that are very accessible, and, go hunt down somebody to help you. I got to where I am because I did two things really well. I asked and I gave. And sometimes my success came because I gave a lot more than I asked for.
Good stuff. All right. Did you write that down, kids?
And we got it.
And they can reach out to me on Instagram. Instagram direct message is like the telephone here in Nashville. So, or anywhere in the music industry, reach out to me on a DM and we can have a conversation. And hopefully this will help somebody in your guys' universe. It was great really great to be on here. I'm really honored. So,
hey, gentlemen, for being a part. Dial him for a part 2 because this was not nearly enough time.
Oh yeah, we can do part 2.
A couple more hours.
Yeah, we probably a lot of content. So I'd say we could do something once a quarter, right?
I'm in. Let's just do it.
All right. Any final words, Nick, JP?
I got nothing. Thanks, Jim. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll we can take all this and make this into some clips too, and get that story out there. So
oh yeah,
yes sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we got you covered.
Jesse, don't hang up. When you stop recording, I want to show you something. Mm-hmm. And my final point is, Nick, he knows a guy who may be willing to help for absolutely nothing other than to get your artists out there, because he knows a guy who literally owns a radio station. And I know for a fact that guy is more than happy to put out brand new music as another avenue, just to put it out there. And if you haven't figured it out yet, that guy's me.
Right on.
All right, guys. Thank you again for tuning in to Grind Lifestyle. Our guest today is Jim Gray, host. I am Jesse Dugas. That is JP Pierce. That is Nick Martin. Until next time, hit that button. We're out.